Hello, Naked Parent Nation, and welcome to today's episode of the Naked Parent Podcast. My name is Chad Ratliff, and I'm your host of this daily podcast focused on supporting parents and professionals raising special needs children. Today, we are fortunate to have Polly Mcdonald with us, who is the mother of two beautiful children. She's a wife and realtor in San Antonio, Texas. And she is 50 years young. Has been married for 19 years as of July 30th, and is raising her family in a Christian household focused on growing their hearts and their minds, which is so beautiful and so much to that. And so, Polly, thank you for being on the show with us today. We're so grateful to have you.
Thank you for having me. I'm really happy to be here.
And I'm thrilled about that. I feel like each show, each connection is just more stories kind of coming into the light. It's more stories for people that are out there struggling, that are searching for that connection or that next idea that's going to lift them to the next day. Because as you know, this is sometimes one moment at a time, one day at a time, one conversation at a time. So I'm excited to have this conversation. And I usually start by trying to get an idea of when this all began. So you say you have a 13-year-old and a 16-year-old. What was it 13 or 16 years ago that led you to believe that something was looking different than what you had imagined?
Oh boy, well that's an easy one for me. We noticed things right off the bat, starting at about 15, 16 months. Phoebe was not smiling for the camera. We had to really get her to sort of engage with us with the camera. And I was so fortunate to have a friend who had a daughter a year older than mine, who already had a diagnosis of autism, who kind of said to me, I notice things with Phoebe. I notice that she's not smiling for the camera, and I notice that she kind of has this sort of distance about her with people, and she kind of takes, like, she didn't run off, but she would kind of wander and do her own things. I had her in a toddler class, and she would not engage with any of the other children. So I kind of put two and two together. I was sort of in denial for a little while with my friend that who hopefully is listening right now. She really got me to look at what was going on. And it was mostly that, and my own insecurity of being a new mom, where I didn't know what I was looking at, really, because I had never had a child before. So
Right.
it was a definite, there was something going on there.
And how long did it take for you to go from there's something going on, but I'm in denial, to there's something going on and I think I kind of know what it is and it's this direction?
Didn't take very long.
Okay.
My husband was very supportive, and both of us were concerned. So denial, I mean, we're talking about maybe a 24-hour period where I was just
Okay.
like, no. And then I thought, well, this is stupid. Of course, something's going on here.
Yes.
And then that was when we had at 18 months, we had the county. We lived in Houston at the time. Harris County, they sent someone out to do kind of a little bit of a check on her. She technically couldn't be diagnosed until she was 2, but at 18 months they were able to come out, and I mean, they were very, candid with us, and they said, yeah, you're really gonna want to go see a specialist. And so we did. And at 2, she was diagnosed by a very good pediatric neurologist probably the best in Houston. And he said, you can't rule anything out with her because she's obviously very bright, but there's too many things here going on. So we're going to put her down as nonverbal. And she wouldn't talk. Of course, now she will talk your ear off.
Really? Sure, there's a lot of listeners out there that love to hear that.
Yeah. Oh, yes. And I was one of those parents when they told me that she was nonverbal. I didn't know what that meant. What does that mean, nonverbal? She's never going to speak. She's never, and they can't answer that. They can't tell you. All they can say is early intervention is the key. And it was, I mean, we immediately got her into speech therapy. And there were times where we were like, why are we doing this? Because, it didn't seem like anything was happening. But it took several years. And I would say I still have to tell people she's nonverbal because her speech is, I don't know how to describe it. I mean, if you asked her, Phoebe, what is your address? Well, she has memorized that. So she can tell you what our address is, but she can't tell you how to get here. And if you asked her direct questions, it's very difficult for her to answer a lot of general questions. Anything that requires abstract thought. If it's a yes or no question, or if you just say something like, what do you want for dinner? She'll definitely let you know. She'll think about it. She'll let you know. But there is a disconnect where it comes to, are you excited about school this year? She doesn't really know how to answer that because there's too many variables there. So.
And then, so you're starting to get a diagnosis. You got the picture of what's going on. How does Polly and handle that? How does your heart reacting, and how's your heart dealing with what you're finding out at this point?
Well, I'm very practical. I'm a very, I'm just kind of one of those people that it's like, okay, well, I have to deal with these challenges in my life, and this is just another challenge. There's nowhere that guarantees that I'm going to have this perfect life that I dreamed of. I think there was a little bit of mourning for the idea that I may have had in my head of my first daughter. But it didn't last long. I mean, it's just one of those things where you just go in head first and you got to do it. And if you are a believer, if you are a Christian, you automatically default to prayer and asking for guidance. And I just felt that at every turn, that this is exactly where we were supposed to be. This was exactly what my child was supposed to have. And it really was all cemented when I had my second child. And as she got older and we really saw her influence and her amazing personality with her sister. Yeah. But it was initially devastating. I mean, of course, anybody who has to face that, the first thing you're thinking is, how am I going to do this? What am I going to do? But it's there. I mean, it's in you. It's in anybody. It's the one of the things that I hated the most was hearing people say things like, well, you must be really strong, and God gave that girl to the right parent. It's like, well, I don't know that that's it at all. I think the thing is that anybody is equipped. Anybody can do it. Anybody can take care of a special needs child. It's whether or not you're going to do it, because there's plenty of parents that walk away from that. And I can't judge those people. I just know that if you had told me 20 years ago that I was going to have a child with autism who couldn't speak and who was going to have to be in special education, I would have looked at you and said, "Oh, no, not me. I can't tie my own shoes."
Yeah,
But of course you can. You love your child and you're going to do everything you can for them.
I love that. And I don't I don't go down specific religious belief tracks or philosophies necessarily, but the thing that I love about people who do have a a faith or a philosophy to fall back on is things that are promoting prayer and are promoting some of these sort of higher callings really make it a lot more. I don't want to say easier, but it just makes it a lot easier to navigate some of the initial um, bombs that go off when you
Hmm.
realize that you have a special needs child and life's not going to look like you thought it was going to.
Sure,
So,
absolutely.
and if you don't have anywhere to turn, if you don't have a friend to call, if you don't have a way of doing things that helps you through difficult moments, you're going to
Yeah,
be in a you're going to be in a real negative, potentially negative place. So
for
I'm
sure.
happy.
For sure.
I love hearing that you had those places to turn to and those things that you do in the situation because you sound like you have a very positive outlook on raising special needs children. Is that fair to say?
Yes, definitely. I mean, I have a lot more confidence now. I don't know if either my husband Matt or I had any confidence in the beginning, but and it doesn't matter whether you're Christian, Muslim, Jewish, doesn't matter. Just the thought process that goes into prayer or just even meditating, just that process where you've taken some time out and you are thinking about it. Your mind is going through all those scenarios. I just believe that God has helped me with that. And for people who are non-believers, I would say just take the time to think as much as you can on it and just um, if you have a group of friends, of course, that's awesome, and you need that support. Um, Reading, things like that. I mean, I did all that anyway, in addition to prayer.
Yeah.
But it's just taking that time out, I think, that is so important, that time for yourself to really process everything.
Yeah. And for Naked Parent Nation, find somebody who aligns with things that you align with, who are in
Absolutely.
a situation like this, and ask them questions and find out
Mhm.
what they're doing because there's a lot of us out there now. So it's not just, special needs does not discriminate in any way, shape, or form based on who you are, where you're from, or what you believe in. So I love that. How about, is there something that stands out that you wish you knew then that you know now?
Um, yes, I didn't realize how alienating, and I hate that word because I know it's very negative, but I didn't realize how alienating autism would be. And I say that because, one of the things that I do is I run an Instagram page that's about my daughter called Autism in Between. And we call it Autism in Between because we feel oftentimes that we are in between everybody else, that Phoebe is not severe and she is not mild. She oftentimes confuses uh, her teachers and her caregivers at school, where they say, wow, she knows what's really going on. And uh, they don't know where to put her. They don't know what to do with her because she just kind of falls in between those cracks. She's extremely bright and her receptive language is phenomenal. She knows almost everything I tell her. That I hate to use the word typical, but a typical 16-year-old would know, would learn. She processes that exactly the same for the most part. But her maturity level is more like an 8-year-old or a 9-year-old when it comes to things that might be a little disappointing, and not all the time, but just some of the time. So we oftentimes find ourselves as parents going, we don't know what to do. We don't know. And so we feel like we're in this sort of canyon where there's neurotypical on this side and Asperger's here. And, it's this spectrum, but it isn't a spectrum for me. It's an upside down, like it's kind of this, and we're down here. And everything else seems to be above us. And all of these programs and different things. And we're kind of stuck. And so it's us navigating through those waters. And I know we are not the only ones that have a child that has autism that is in this position, because it is such a spectrum. It is such, one kid with autism, it's one kid with autism, right? So that's kind of where we are with that. We are just trying to figure out what's going to happen to her in 20 years. Everybody wonders that, right? What's going to happen? And we have that Instagram account to kind of help other people see our challenges, what we have done, what has worked for us, because we know that there has to be other people out there. It seems like almost every channel is for, or every account is for either kids that are really severe or kids that are, working their way through college, and they're extremely bright and gifted. And we're sort of left behind on that. We don't want to be left behind, and we don't want to see others left behind. So that's kind of what all that's about.
I appreciate you sharing that. It's very real, and I identify, and I have a dream, and I'll tell you more about it at another time, but it's called Rocco Blue Ranch. And my special needs son is Rocco, and my daughter's name is Blue. And Rocco Blue Ranch will be this working ranch for children that age out of the public school systems, and they will go and live on Rocco Blue Ranch, and they'll participate on the working ranch at whatever level their abilities allow them to be. That's one of my efforts towards answering a similar question for my kids. That where can they be? What's it going to look like? What kinds of people will be in their lives? That makes me feel like I get a little bit more control on sort of putting this together. And then all of a sudden there's room for 20 beds rather than just 2 for my kids. And so now maybe this movement can open up to 18 additional children, not to mention the benefit it's going to have on the local community as well.
Mm-hmm.
Well, we can get into that, but I'm glad we're having this conversation, because these are conversations we need to be having, because these are real questions that we need to be answering for ourselves and for our children.
Yes.
So that we can,
because there's great places out there. There are one here in Texas is Daymark Living, and they're phenomenal, but they're expensive.
Yes.
And for real, I mean, for just even for us, and I would say my husband has a decent job. I would say we are probably the most middle of middle America that you could get, and we're terrified that we aren't doing enough, and we don't we don't really know what we're what we're facing, other than it, Phoebe is going to be living with us for a long time, and whatever comes after that, we'll see. But even though she really would like her own house, she said.
Well, and like I said, that's why we have to have these conversations, because not that
Hmm.
the answer is going to come today before the show ends, but
Right.
it's this kind of conversation that will develop and morph. And yeah, there may be situations available for an uber wealthy group of people, but that's not, it doesn't solve well, that's one group of people. Now we need the
Right.
other group of people as well. So and
Right.
that's part of the reason the show was I wanted to create a community of people, of parents that can support one another, and that's a part of that's a topic that we're going to have to dive into in an effort to support one another.
Hmm.
So I appreciate you bringing that up. In the meantime, we continue with understanding your journey a little bit better, and maybe you can share what's one of the worst moments of that stands out. One of the worst moments on your journey so far.
Oh goodness,
And
that is
this
such a
isn't
good
to
question.
make it negative. It's just to help some people realize that the stuff that they're holding in
Right.
is stuff that's really happening out there.
So I would say, moving when we were in Houston, we were in a school district that had this actually amazing school. It was only for pre-K for kids with special needs, but oh my goodness, it was amazing. But it was not just for kids with special needs, it was also for gifted kids who were older, who were in elementary school and middle school. And so there was this really great interaction with these kids. We loved that school. When we moved to San Antonio uh, in 2009, at the end of 2009, we were more than unimpressed with
Okay.
our school district. And I think that if there were to be a disappointment, because honestly, your child's education has more to do with you as a parent than anything else, right? You have a responsibility toward your child's education. And the one thing I think I learned about public school, and there really are not private schools here like there are in Houston. It's it's not anything like that. It's very, I'd say they're a good 10 years behind as far as that goes. There's
Okay.
Houston had a ton of private schools for kids, mostly on the spectrum, and boy, it was something. But here is different, and I just learned that I was responsible for ensuring my child was educated. I mean educated, not teaching to the lowest denominator, which is what school districts will do, because a lot of school districts see themselves as, look, we get this much per kid. Of course, special education gets more per child in Texas. But we don't see that education coming out of our children. We don't see that money, that all that money that's being put into the special education program. I personally do not see it in my child's education. So I have had to step in, instead of stepping in at the ARD and saying, what are you guys doing? Which you never really want to do. You
Yeah.
need to go in and you need, I mean, if I had any advice to give for parents whose kids are going into school in the fall. It is work with the team, work with them, work with the principal, get to know all of those people because you are going to know them whether you want to or
Yeah,
not.
right, right.
And I mean, if you show a little sense of humor and you show that, hey, we are all working together here, you're going to get a lot, a lot more out of that. But you also have to be realistic. You are not getting a neurotypical education for your child. It is not happening. And that was the wake up call with this year in Zoom classes. If I had to hear 3 plus 3 is 6 and 6 plus 6 is 12 for my 16-year-old, who, by
Yeah,
the way, knows her multiplication tables and knows how to divide and
yeah,
knows basic algebra, I really was pulling my hair out by the end of the year. And, I mean, what are you going to do? It's a Zoom class that's for special education.
right.
So I had to start doing stuff with her. And she didn't like it. She was not happy about it. But it is ultimately your responsibility as a parent to make sure your child is educated. It's not anybody else's. And you can think to yourself, well, I'm a taxpayer and it doesn't matter. Everybody else is a taxpayer too. The best thing you can do is just take 20 minutes, a day and just kind of start teaching your kid things that they need to know because they're not going to learn it unless you are helping them out,
It's great
at least
advice.
this year.
That's great advice. So are you optimistic for next year, or are you in the same boat?
Well, I am optimistic in several ways. Um, and I mean, her curriculum, she's going into 11th grade. Well, there's so many good things about her high school. One is they have people that know her there. They have, because these are kids that have come all the way up with her from kindergarten. And so they know her. So there's familiarity there. And she is also involved in band.
Oh, good for her.
Uh-huh. She doesn't march because, we don't know how well she'd do with that. It's a lot of pressure. I don't know how bands are anywhere else, but in Texas, it's like football. In fact, the band members are all saying, "Oh, there's a football game." We didn't know. We thought it was us y'all were watching. Marching band is just
That's
huge.
awesome.
And yeah,
Good for
and
you.
so marching is a little bit, but they have a special class during the school day for percussion, for only percussion. And so she has learned how to play her drum, but she also knows how to play the piano and she can play she memorizes mostly. She memorizes and she'll just suddenly on her keyboard bust out with uh, the song from Frozen 2 or Super Mario, the
I
theme.
love it.
It's insane. It's
I love
insane.
it.
You're just sitting there and all of a sudden she just starts playing. You're like, where did you learn this? How did you
That's
learn
awesome.
this? So her teachers are very supportive of her. So in that regard, that's kind of priceless in a way. And so, yes, I'm optimistic there. Not as much on the academic scale. I have to work with her on that, but in every other way, I think it's going to be a good year.
Okay. Well, that sounds exciting. How about for you? What do you do to take care of you? Yeah,
Well,
that wasn't supposed to
we
be a joke.
Um, I am very like, I mentioned my husband Matt he's pretty amazing and he is very supportive, we do a lot of stuff together. We're best friends and we're both very silly people. And so We do a lot of crazy stuff together, but we just came back from Florida. We share a house every year with my sister and her husband. And they took both of my babies back to Indiana with them. And Matt and I mean, we had this house for almost 3 weeks to ourselves. And I cannot, that's never happened. We,
That's
they've been gone a couple different times at different aunts' houses, but not like this. This was nuts. So it was to a point where we, about the end of the second week, we were like, are we ever going to get our kids back? But it was great. It was great. And things like that, are so helpful. And so if anybody is listening out there and you have a friend that is offering to take care of your child or children for a little while, do not ever feel like they can't handle it or that you're going to feel guilt. Just take the time, even if it's a couple hours, just to kind of get out of the house. But if they take your kids for a day or a weekend, wow, that's precious time. And you need that time to connect with your spouse, or if you don't have a spouse, if you have a boyfriend or girlfriend, whatever that connection, you need that. You need that. I mean, you have to have that. If you don't, it's going to be tough on any marriage or partnership. It's just going to be very difficult. So take advantage of it.
I agree. I'm glad that you were able to find that. So sometimes we do like a lightning round. It's kind of one word to one sentence answers to
one word.
a few questions. Are you up for it?
Sure.
All right. What's the best advice you've received?
In one word?
Or one sentence? Or 2 sentences, whatever.
Don't lose your sense of humor.
Okay. Share a personal habit that contributes to your success.
Waking up early.
Do you have a top resource or recommendation to share with other parents?
YouTube.
What's the next thing on your list you want to add for your individual well-being?
Probably take some more classes in my professional enrichment. So stuff for real estate.
Awesome. What's one thing you think would improve your life if you did it or had it?
One thing that would improve my life? A pool.
A pool. Yes. And I have enjoyed this conversation with you. You're very easy to talk to, and I could talk to you all day long, and I want to thank you for that. In kind of winding up, is there anything that we've talked about or that we haven't talked about that you would like to leave for other parents out there in Naked Parent Nation as some guidance that you can share before we sign off?
I don't know. There's just so much information out there and it's hard to disseminate everything. And I would say if your instinct has worked for you thus far, don't lose that. Stick with that gut feeling wherever you are in the process. Just stick it out and you will be rewarded. It may not be the way you think, but it will be a reward and you will recognize it like that.
Polly, I know Naked Parent Nation is going to be so grateful that we had you on the show today. You brought a light to my day, my afternoon.
Good.
You gave a lot of knowledge, and I hope that we can connect sometime down the road and just keep connected and get an update and share this journey together.
Sounds great. Thank you for having me.
Okay, have a wonderful rest of your day. I wish you and your family all the love and blessings that you deserve.
Thank you. You as well. Take care.
Okay, bye.